Okay, and good evening, and welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. It's my great pleasure tonight to have Atlantic County Commissioner, Republican, Andrew W. Parker III. Andrew, welcome to the
Hello,
program.
hello. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And as we've discussed, Andrew, this has been in the making, this conversation for several years, and I'm glad that we were able to finally do it. And I'm looking forward to a very engaging conversation with you this evening. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to start, Andrew, by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself. Your resume is quite impressive. A Walden University summa cum laude graduate with a master's degree in science education, specializing in middle school mathematics. That's very impressive.
That is correct.
Tell us some more about Andrew William Parker III.
Well, I tell you, thank you for that introduction, John. And I am, a pretty simple person. I'm no different or no better or more intelligent than anyone. I just try to let common sense rule the day and hard work rule the day. And so I've been blessed, by first being alive on this planet and being given life. So first, giving all honor and credit to God for creating us, our creator.
Amen.
And with that, that you and I both believe that there are certain rights that we're given as humans that live here on earth. So that begins the conversation of what republicanism and the difference, what I believe the republicanism and the liberal movement means at this stage, and what it has meant over the years, just recognizing those rights that are given to us, that no man, no authority has the right to usurp or take away or threaten in any way, shape, or form. We all have those rights that are given to us and can't be taken by any president, any commissioner, any freeholder, or any name that you want to, or title that you want to give us. So that's who I am. And I graduated from Egg Harbor Township High School in 1996. I was a pretty decent athlete in those days, and broke a few records, rushing records as running back for Egg Harbor Township High School. I believe I still, 30 years later, hold a good portion of those records at Egg Harbor Township High School. So that gives you an idea of what kind of athletic career I had there. I had a great time. And, I'm humbled because I, was born into a situation where I was able to receive certain blessings that, I began to learn as I got older and looked and traveled more and got to look into foreign lands and foreign countries, that everyone is not allotted those same opportunities to develop and to grow that I was given. So I went to college in 1996 on an athletic scholarship to the University of New Haven. And I started out in criminal justice. I did 3 years of criminal justice investigations, and I was going to be a lawyer, and that was the game plan. Lo and behold, I ended up changing completely, as most kids do. At 18 years old, we really don't know what we're going to do and what wrinkles life's going to changes life's going to throw our way. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in business. I worked for the casinos for a few years in management. Casino marketing management, and then went to retail management before starting a small business heating and air conditioning franchise with my father called Air Serve Heating and Cooling, which is now called Parker Air LLC. And once that happened, I needed to supplement my income. We're talking about the economy again and income again. I needed to supplement my income and started substitute teaching in Atlantic City public school system. And 16 years later, I'm still working. I've started substitute teaching one day and I never left. I've been there every day since. I went back to I went to a 2-year program at Stockton where I was certified to become a teacher in the state of New Jersey. And then following that 2-year program, while I was working and still running the business, I went back and received my master's degree from Walden University. So that's my story. I am a middle school math teacher. I've taught just about every grade from kindergarten to 8th grade and every subject but what I do specialize in is middle school mathematics.
Now, Andrew, I have to ask you, since I'm a big football fan as well, were there any running backs who you looked up to when you were creating all those records, Greg Harbour?
Listen, so many. I mean, I was a historian of the game, so I go back to your Gale Sayers, the kind of running backs that most people would never even know of.
Right.
You know, Gale Sayers.
I'd like to return to the classics.
Can't buy this, super flyness, like a shyness. Your highness is performing, look how long the line is. It's what happened, you make shit that's timeless. That's what happened, these rappers is the pioneers. What do it take to be a legend like Nas is? Not so novice, I'm so polished. I got a right to be a little bit.
Yeah, your Walter Paytons and, you know.
They've been going to Payton all day. Payton now 84 yards and 17 carries. Payton now 125 yards in the first half of this one. Payton already 150 yards. Payton up 34 carries, matching his number. Picked up 193 yards. Walter Payton now with 200 yards in the ball. Team record is 205 and 10 yards. Puts Walter in the Bear record books by himself. History has been made here today. 275 yards. Not only did he smash the Bear single game rushing record, he smashed the entire NFL mark as well.
Just the kind of running backs, you know, back then that were changing the game. They were when the way they ran just literally transformed the game of football forever. You know, it was Jim Brown. You know, nobody ever seen a guy so big, run so fast, and be so agile.
Football.
I thought he was going to be a great back. It turns out that he's the greatest running back of all time.
Set yourself in every way, stamina-wise, mentally, courage.
Jim Brown, the greatest running back that has ever breathed.
He had great balance, he had great speed, and he had great size. At 235 pounds, he could run 100 yards in under 10 seconds. When he made up his mind to do it, he was going to do it. You couldn't knock him off his feet.
He always shocked everybody how fast he was.
Power. I mean, he had power. You ain't see nobody knock him down. Look at the film. You don't see nobody knock him back. You see him go in the stacks and he come out.
He never missed a game. I think that says all you need to know about his toughness.
Nobody.
It just wasn't a thing. You got your Eddie Georges now, you know, and that came later in his likeness, your bigger running backs. But, you know, Jim Brown was definitely the first of his kind.
Yes, he was.
And so I go back to those guys, your Gale Sayers. Then, of course, you have your Emmitt Smith, you have Barry Sanders. You can't miss those names. You know, I came up during that era when the Cowboys were winning, even though I'm a Eagles fan. I came up in high school during the Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman years, and so it was hard not to appreciate what they were doing out there in Texas. But Barry Sanders, I always say Barry Sanders was one of my favorites, not just because of how he played, but just, you know, his creativity on the field, but just his demeanor. You know, the guy would he'd make this amazing play where he should have been tackled 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and somehow he makes it through to score a touchdown.
Each of Barry Sanders' 10 seasons was a masterpiece. He rushed for at least 1,100 yards every year he played, and 6 times was a first-team All-Pro.
And he gets to the end zone, he hands the ball to the referee, turns around and never celebrates and walks back to the sideline, and that's just it. He was always focused. He never celebrated. Different type of player than we have in the NFL nowadays.
Yeah.
So I think that demeanor that he showed to me was something that I took on as a player, and it's something I've always coached my students, my players to do and to be. Just, I would tell them, listen, when you get to the end zone, act like you've been there before.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll tell you what, Andrew, it's fantastic, and you certainly know your football and your history and your running backs. I've got to throw a couple of names in there who I always liked, and one of them was Larry Zonka. young man, a real bulldog runner for the Dolphins, the undefeated team back in 72. And then Brandon Jacobs. Of course, I'm a big blue. I'm a Giants fan.
Jacobs.
So I always like. So I always like Brandon Jacobs, and I thought Tiki Barber had a great career too. But
he absolutely had a great career.
Yeah, and it's amazing.
The thunder and lightning.
Yes, thunder and lightning. That's right, exactly. Now let's talk a little bit about the fact, and I think it's very significant, Andrew, that you're an educator, but you're also a representative, and I think that that's very important because essentially we see in today's political environment the need for education, which is one of the reasons we created the New Jersey Constitutional Republicans. But I think it's very significant that you are indeed an educator and a representative. And how important do you think that is in giving you that ability to educate your constituents in Atlantic County as a freeholder or commissioner, rather?
I think it's hugely important. And, even with and I know at times our conservative party doesn't always agree with our NJEA union and our NEA unions, but I'm very involved in both of our unions, both on a national, state, and local level. And so one of the main focuses of our union is to engage our members into every party, not just one party, and to engage our members and get them involved in the political process and get educators involved into running for office. And we have a program called See Educators Run for the NEA, the National Education Association, that I'm an alum of. And we went out to Detroit. We were out in Detroit a few years ago, and I was, pretty much trained by our union how to run for office. Mm-hmm. And so those type of programs are programs that I'm proud to be a part of. Those are the kind of programs that I will continue to be a part of. And I think it's absolutely important on all levels to see educators that are willing to get engaged in our political process and bring a level of, I guess, just to bring a perspective from educators into the political arena.
And what are some of the challenges that you're having with the Freeholder Board in Atlantic County at this time? Obviously, there's fiscal situations that are always a concern, right?
I'm going to say that if you look at what we've been doing in Atlantic County in this past year or so, we've done a lot of winning. And so it's good to be a part of a team that comes together and does what is in the best interest of the county and the residents, and just first being a good custodian of the money. Mm-hmm. We had a great victory just the other day, a string of victories that we had against the state. Our executive Dennis Levinson and through the county and the county commissioners took the state to court over the pilot plan that they introduced. Mm-hmm. The new pilot, I guess I should call it. And so we won that lawsuit. That was a big lawsuit. And now we just got word back that we not only won the lawsuit, but we also won damages as well. So we had the judge and had sided with the county and said that the new pilot change was not okay. It was improperly done. It was improperly put into place. It was improperly negotiated. And the interesting part of it is, if you listen to our executive speak, he tried several times to sit down with the state of New Jersey to mediate this before it went to a legal battle. And the state of New Jersey pretty much, said that we're not going to meet with you. Mm-hmm. They took the high road and said, they weren't going to meet with the county. They weren't going to negotiate. They weren't going to mediate. And so we won both of those cases for the residents of Atlantic County. And so we won punitive damages, and we've also won a lot of revenue that's going to be coming back to our county so that we can do the programs and provide the services to county residents that they need. So we've been winning on that front. We've also been doing a lot of road projects, roads and bridges. If you look around the county, the White Horse Pike, the Black Horse Pike, going into Hamilton Township, going into Hamilton, this road work being done everywhere, part of the infrastructure money that came in. And so we're making sure that the county is getting its fair share of that money, and we're utilizing those dollars appropriately. We also have all kind of youth programs that are going on in catering to the youth. We have Parks and Recreation, one of the committees that I oversee, that I liaison, Parks and Rec. We're working on a joint venture maybe some almost a shared service, I guess, with Camden County Park System, where we're looking to do a bike path west expansion, where we're going to be expanding our bike path to be able to be ridden from Atlantic City all the way east and connect all the way to Philadelphia. And so that's going to be something that's coming forward, and how to make our bike paths safer and just to make it, more accessible and user friendly, and so we're having those type of conversations also in the county. We're doing in our culture and heritage committee, we're doing a lot of programs that we're for nonprofits. We have funding from the state where they can get $5,000 to $10,000 grants through our county, and all they have to do is show that they're a nonprofit organization and they're doing a program that is either historical or it's something to do with culture or the arts. So it's either on the art side or it's on the history side, and those are two separate grants. But we just got full funding for that at about $218,000 for this year, which is huge. We've never had that kind of money before, and we've been able to help finance in part, if not whole, some of the local cultural programs, like the Hispanic Association of Atlantic Counties has a Latin Fest that's going on in this fall. I believe it's October. We just had a Juneteenth program at Mount Zion Baptist Church where we gave them $10,000 for their program. There's all kind of programs like that we have going on. So we're just, listen, we're working. Our county is working, and if you look at our meeting minutes or watch our meetings, you'll see that you have representation that agrees, no matter what the party is, on just about 90+% of everything that we vote on what's in the best interest of the residents of Atlantic County.
Outstanding. And just back up a minute, if you would, Andrew, and just explain to the people who may not know what the pilot program is, what pilot stands for.
Well, payment in lieu of taxes is what the pilot stands for. And this would have been the second pilot. If those who remember years back when we had an economic down cycle, I guess, a few years back, we had a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, where the casinos were able to make a payment in lieu of their taxes. And it was, of course, at a lesser amount. So at that lesser amount, for those who don't know, the trickle down is that lesser amount that we're charging the big corporations is now coming out of the budgets for the money that your local governments are able to use for, road work, for parks, for hiring police officers, for any of the work that needs to be done locally on your towns. And so in essence, we're giving a break to the wealthy industry on the backs of residents whose taxes at that point in time in Atlantic City were already astronomically high, and so they tried it again this past year. They wanted to do a new pilot, even though that the casino revenue was at an all-time high, record-breaking numbers for casino revenue, and overhead was at an all-time low because we were coming out of COVID, and the casinos never fully staffed again. They didn't go, the numbers never went back up to fully staffing their programs or their departments. And a lot of the money was coming from online gambling. So it's like you have record-breaking profits, and your overhead is at a lower level than it's been in probably decades. And somehow we still thought that it was a good idea from the state of New Jersey and our Democrats to bail the casinos out of something. And so we didn't think that was fair. And the county didn't think it was fair. We didn't think it was right. And we took it to court, and the judge sided with us and said that, and agreed that it wasn't fair, and that the residents of Atlantic County, not the casinos, should get the break. If there's going to be any tax relief, it should go to the people and to the residents, and that money should go into programs and to getting people help. And county court system that we just started, that's another thing I didn't talk about. Our county court system, the first of its kind. It's a pilot in the state of New Jersey where we have a county municipal court. And so we piloted that program, and we cut the ribbon just a few months ago and opened up our county court. And the beauty of that is our county court system, for those that don't know, is that instead of having a court inside of your municipality, most of our municipalities, since bail reform, their courts are running at a loss. $200, $300, $400, $500,000 loss inside of your local budgets. And so, and by moving this to the county, that takes that burden, that financial burden from your local municipality. So now your local municipality will have more money to be able to do the kind of projects that it needs to do to shore up local activities and local services. And then on the other side of that, one of the things that I'm really excited about, being a part of the county court system, helping make that decision from township committee before I was a commissioner, is that the county houses, for those who don't know, your county is what houses most of your programs, most of your social programs, most of your help towards senior citizens, towards your homeless, towards your, any of our parts of our population that are struggling or find themselves down on their luck. The county is where you find a lot of those resources, whether through the sheriff's department, through the prosecutor's department, even now with our new prosecutor. Now he's getting out there and has initiatives towards the homeless as well. Mr. Will Reynolds doing an excellent job starting out, and as our new county prosecutor. And so, being able to take the majority of the folks that we know that are getting arrested in our country, we have the data to show it's from either domestic violence, substance abuse, or some sort of economic. I have a friend of mine behind me help me with my notes here. So, or some sort of economic downturn. And so these folks are folks that don't so much need to be in prison or to be adjudicated. These are folks that need help. And so the county is in a position to be able to get them help, where we can have them show up in front of a judge, and the judge is more customer service friendly and not so much an authority figure, and just saying, listen, you're here in front of our court, what seems to be the issue. If it's domestic violence, then we have a domestic violence counselor that's going to meet you over in breakout room, whatever room number that is. Or if it's a substance abuse issue, we have a substance abuse counselor that's going to meet you in breakout room, whatever it is, and then you can go into those rooms and see if there's some way that we can get that person help, as opposed to throwing them in jail. And those are the kind of things those are the kind of things that the county, that Atlantic County is doing, and the kind of services that are provided inside of your county budget. So you have the state that's pulling money out to give that money and give tax breaks to wealthy corporations like casinos. It's not going to work. We talked about the founding principles of the Republican Party and why, and we'll get into soon of why minorities have switched from over the years from the Democrat Party to the Republican Party, and sometimes back and forth again. And as we alluded to earlier, normally it's because of economic downturns, and when people are hurting economically and they're looking for someone or some party to come up with ideas or some sort of ingenuity that's going to drive the economy and make life, just a little easier living, a little better living for people here in this free society. So those are the things that we're doing in the county.
Well, it certainly sounds like a great job's being done, Andrew, as you're serving on the commissioner's board there in Atlantic County. I wanted to say that over the years, we've talked about with our Cumberland County board, commissioner board, freeholder board, we've tried to impress upon the constituents of the county the importance of what county commissioners do, and that ultimately, Andrew, the decisions that you're making as a commissioner have a greater impact on the constituents than perhaps even those at the state, Trenton, at the state house level, at the gubernatorial level, and especially at the national level. The decisions that you're making and the representation that you're offering has a greater impact on the people who live in Atlantic County than all of those other branches or all of those other levels of government. Do you think that the constituents of Atlantic County truly understand that?
Well, I think that they are beginning to be more informed and more engaged in that. There's some that, of course, that are those of us that are really engaged into our local government and show up to our township or city council meetings and show up to our school board meetings and show up, absolutely, we understand that, but we have to, as you said, there's an educational piece to this where we have to make sure that it's the masses of people that understand that process and not just a small group of isolated folks like us who are going to these meetings and are engaged in this, and this is why it's important to have educators as well, as we touched on earlier, to have educators involved in the political process that can go out and teach the history as well as teach civics and civic responsibility. Third grade civics, that I also taught, and just to be able to teach what the civic responsibility is, because this takes the argument right back to the founding of our country with, Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists and Thomas Jefferson. It goes back to whether you want smaller government or bigger government, and why, and people don't really, there are a lot of people that don't know why they're choosing one over the other. They're choosing a political party based on an ideology as opposed to choosing them based on I guess, an economic strategy or social strategy or and that's not why we should be choosing our political representatives. We should be choosing them based on their ideas, their ideals, and how they plan on moving our society forward in a more perfect direction.
Right. And being an educator, you can certainly appreciate, and I know that you do, the great words of a man who we both revere, and a man who I consider to have encapsulated initial Republican Party principles probably better than any man ever, and that is Frederick Douglass. And he said that it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. And as an educator,
Absolutely.
You can certainly, that's probably one of your keys, one of the important statements that you take with you every day when you go in to educate the children.
John, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to go back to Stockton University for those 2 years, that 2-year program, and get certified in education and to receive my master's degree in education. And I realized, particularly in our inner cities, I teach in the city of Atlantic City, and particularly in our inner cities, I realized how important it is to have a good education and good educators and people that are willing to come from all different walks of life and educational experiences and backgrounds, and not just have folks that are education majors, but to have people that come from all walks of industry, to have people come from the tech industry and decide to become educators, to have folks that, that come from the construction industry and bring them into education to teach our kids how to construct things and how to build things and how to think like a builder and how to think like a HVAC technician, and things of that nature, electrician, and we need those type of skill set, those type of minds if we're going to be building. And to me, I talk a lot about the economy. It's all about building things. I don't want to be a part of the destruction team, find someone else to demo the job. I want to be part of the group that comes together and the community comes together and say, what are we going to build next? Once that project comes down, what are we putting up there next, and how are we going to go about that building? How are we going to pay are we going to union? Are we not going to union? Are we paying prevailing wage? Are we not paying prevailing wage? Those are the things that matter. And when you get down.
Okay. And also, Andrew, a remarkable statement that Frederick Douglass made that's very applicable to the strategy and the propaganda that's been put out by the Democrats in the urban areas for a long time. And this is a remarkable statement that he made. He said, quote, "Where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe," unquote. Is that a remarkable evaluation given by Douglass that really was a look into the future of how to exploit people who are not able to do for themselves? And that is what Lincoln talked about, that the government should be there to do for the people what they can't do for themselves.
And I think that we're touching on some very important issues, and it goes right back to education. I think education, not government, is that tool that we need to put inside of the toolbox of each citizen, of each of us, no matter what color, creed, sex, ideal, religion, When you come here, we need to put a proper education into each of them, starting at one of the cores of what we talked about is civic responsibility, because how many people are frustrated with their living conditions here in America and are ready to just throw everything away and turn it upside down. But then when you ask them about their civic responsibility, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know what they're responsible for and what role they're playing in allowing some of this corruption to take place. And if you have an undereducated populace, then they're easy to corrupt.
That's right. And of
It's
course,
very easy.
and one of the Douglas starts off that statement by saying that where justice is denied, and that can be attributed to the crime that occurs in many of the urban areas, and that people aren't safe to go out and to recreate in their property. They're not safe to go to work. They're not safe to go to the store. And that is the first responsibility of government, is to secure the person and their property. And I believe that it's important that the institutions of law and order be established so that the urban communities can once again be vibrant. And this has been an abject failure of government in many regards, and not providing justice for those who live in the urban communities. Would you agree?
Everyone, my dad always says to me that human beings want the same basic things. They want food, water, shelter. They want to be able to live in an environment where they feel safe. They want to be able to to create a family, to procreate, to raise that family, to watch their kids grow, to watch their grandkids get older. People just want to live pretty peacefully, for the most part. And we want the same basic common things, and so you're absolutely correct in what you're saying. And so if we can't protect our inner cities, if living in an inner city starts to feel unsafe to people, and we know that it is, and we know that it has been that way, then you're absolutely right. Then we failed as a governmental system. We failed as an educational system. We're failing to teach the kind of ideals and responsibilities, as we're talking about, the civic responsibilities that each of us has in creating that type of world, to create that kind of society. And the pressure and the onus goes back to the individual. And that goes back to the difference between larger government or, individual responsibility and rights. It goes to the individual. Am I a better neighbor than I was yesterday? Can I be a better neighbor, to my neighbors, and how? How can I do that? How do I go about that? That's up to me. No one can come in and legislate that. No one can legislate my heart and my actions and my will. No one can make me be kind to my neighbors, and pick up their trash cans because I see them, the wind blew them over into the street. No one can make a person do that. That's something that has to be, inside of them. And those are the things that I think that you alluded to earlier in saying that, with the Frederick, I think it was the Frederick Douglass quote where, it's tough to change adults, the minds of adults. It's very tough to change those. So you start in schools, you start with the kids, and you start with the new generation. And we tried not to make the same errors that we made in the generation or the decades before.
Yes.
So it's a reflective practice. And so we sit back and we look at what we thought we were going to do. Same with politics and economic in economic strategies of presidents. It's no different, from looking at parties. What party do you choose? Are you a Republican or you're a Democrat? And, you look back at, what did we endeavor to do? What did we say we were going to do? And now let's take a look at what did we actually do? How did it work? It either worked in certain places and it didn't work in other places, and be able to sit back and reflect on that and say, well, we're going to engage in the process, putting the right minds, the best minds we can inside of this think tank, so that we can, again, move and try to create a more perfect union in a more perfect environment. And as long as we're progressive in that way and we're striving for better, and all of us are striving to become better and better and better, then America works. and the principles of America works. But if we have a populace of people that don't care, if we have an uneducated populace, if we have an uninspired populace of people, we have the masses of citizens in our country that are unengaged in this process and unwilling to be educated in this process, then it's absolutely not going to work. It's absolutely not going to work, because you're going to have, just like the system that we left in England with the feudalism system and things of that nature. We have the aristocrats and all those things, and kings and queens. You're going to end up with a small population of people that are going to be in the know, and everyone else is going to be at their beck and call and at their will.
That's right, Andrew. And also that same aristocracy represented the slave power. Less than 2% of the aristocracy that owned slaves in the South, and essentially had complete control over all of the southern states. And this is why they wanted to protect the peculiar institution, as they referred to it, because it was benefiting 2% of the population at the expense of the other 98%, not only including the oppressed slaves unjustly, the black slaves, but also many of the poor white people who were unable to work. And of course, the Republican Party has always been built on the idea of free labor, and ultimately getting a job, making enough money to create your own business. So where you're hiring, and where you're hiring, and you're not answering to anyone anymore, but you're also providing employeeship to those who are looking for work. And that, of course, is a great Republican Party principle. But Andrew, I wanted to ask you too about the devastation that's occurred within the Black community, really essentially for the last, we could say approximately 70, 75 years, with the increase of the single parent home. And now it's not only part of it's been a blight on the Black community, but now it's becoming a blight also on the white community, as fewer and fewer people are becoming married, fewer and fewer people are having children, but those who are having children are normally now the norm is a single parent family. Talk about the devastation that is attributed. Has been attributed to in the Black community, and the fact that some of the government programs, essentially Democratic Party policies, have, as Frederick Douglass said, where poverty is enforced, quote unquote, where poverty is enforced, are examples of helping single family homes, single family parents, as opposed to promoting and helping nuclear family units with husbands and wives together, as opposed to a single family home. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
John, it sounds like you're alluding to the welfare state, and even a little bit before, and going into FDR and New Deal, when the Democrats, after I think the Republicans had about a 70-year run where they were the dominant party after freeing the slaves, the party of Lincoln, and could really just do no wrong, and just really do no wrong for years. And then you had an economic downturn with Hoover, again, with the Great Depression, which sparked enough of discomfort in the masses of people, particularly the minority community, that said, listen, if you go to any minority community, you'll hear people say things like this: when America catches a cold, the minority and Black community has the flu. And so things are much worse in those communities. So if America was in the Great Depression, imagine how bad things were in the minority community, in the Black community. Things had to be pretty despair, and so out of that is where minorities made a decision as a collective group that they were going to, as I believe the statement was made back then by some of our Black leaders, to tell the minority community to turn over your pictures of Lincoln. So go into your houses and turn the pictures over of Lincoln so he won't see you as we switch parties. And but that kind of language just tells you where the heart of those people was back then, and it was on the economy.
Yeah.
And listen, nothing against Lincoln. They said, listen, no, nothing against you, Lincoln. We love you. We love what the Republicans have stood for and have done for us over the last 70 years. But at that time, at the Great Depression, it wasn't helping. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel like a place where they loved and wanted to be and felt free and felt equal and felt all those things and rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. Minorities weren't feeling it. And so they had to send a stern message. They chose to send a stern message to the Republican Party and powers that be by completely switching parties to the Democrat Party. Now, what happens at that point, you well know, we get FDR. And so FDR came in with the New Deal, and the New Deal was to invest money into social programs, instead of the trickling down, the financial trickling down and wealth trickling down, they decided that they would invest into social programs and the downtrodden and the low socioeconomic and create welfare states and project homes and Social Security and FDIC and all those different federal programs and federal money that was going to come in and save the day for the minority community and create economic prosperity in our communities and in minority communities. But now we're talking what? We're talking 1929 to 1932. And now we're in 2022, and we have yet to have that promise or those policies show us any type of growth, economic growth or empowerment in the minority community. So my question is, at this point in time, when are we going to be ready to send another message? I'll take it. I guess I shouldn't say this, but I'll say it anyway on air. I guess what I'm saying is that when are we going to have the ability or the fortitude to say enough is enough? We're not happy with our living conditions in the inner cities. You go into inner city into our country, whether it be Atlantic City, Camden, Tampa, New Orleans, Detroit, Flint, Michigan, you see some of the same suffering in each of those communities. And when will enough be enough for us to send a message and say, maybe we turn, President Barack Obama's pictures over in our houses and switch parties again?
Andrew, and I wanted to touch on the recent Blexit event that you were so gracious to have me come and speak. I was speaking on Frederick Douglass's great speech in 1852. And of course, this was even before the Republican Party was established. And he gave a great speech to essentially abolitionists in Rochester, New York, where he was living. And it's called The Meaning of the 4th of July for the Negro. And he asked the question, are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? He asked that question about his fellow blacks and the black slaves. And he gave a scathing analysis of the apathy and the indifference of even the abolitionists, the white abolitionists who weren't doing enough at that time to change and to outlaw, to get rid of, to abolish slavery. And he wasn't speaking to Confederates. He was speaking to his supporters, the people who believed in abolition. And he really set a fire. But at the end of the message, and he even said that this has been a scathing report. And he says, and he believed that the arm of the Lord is not shortened and that the doom of slavery is certain. He even anticipated at that time, Andrew, that there was going to be emancipation, that there was going to be a great conflict that would divide the nation over slavery. And what he did, he said that he drew encouragement from the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence, of course, is what Lincoln used to apply the rights, the unalienable God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to the black slave as well as to the white man. Of course, Stephen Douglas and Judge Tawney and the Dred Scott decision, they said no, that those rights are only for white people. But even Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, admitted that the founders meant, when they said the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, also meant the black slaves and anyone, women, men, regardless of where they're from, and that was to be applied unto them. So what I'm doing is I'm actually writing an essay, Andrew, and I'm calling it "What to Black America is the Republican Party." And it's a very complex and convoluted story. And you've already hit upon the failures of the Hoover administration, but even the failures go back even further, really, to Reconstruction, Andrew. And with the disastrous choice of Andrew Johnson that Abraham Lincoln made. And I would argue that it was the party bosses at that time in 1864 who told him to pick Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was a true white supremacist, a Democrat, but he was a unionist. And of course, Abraham Lincoln, unfortunately, was murdered. And Andrew Johnson became president and did everything he could to basically keep the same antebellum culture within the South that the radical Republicans, they were called radical Republicans because they wanted to abolish slavery. And that was Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner and Ben Wade from Ohio. And of course, Lincoln came around to thinking the same way and understood that the Civil War was going in the direction that it was, stagnation, and even the Confederacy winning it, because the North was not resolute, the Union was not resolute, the Republican Party was not resolute in abolishing slavery, which is what they had to do, and then they did. But I wanted to just finish up this this comment by saying this, Andrew. In this study, this essay that I'm writing, what I'm seeing is that it goes back really to the beginning, when after Abraham Lincoln was shot. But really what it does is it shows that when the Republican Party gets away from the principles of the Declaration of Independence and only merely looks at the economic policies only, as opposed to the rights of the laws of nature and nature's God, to the self-evident truth that all men are created equal application and protection of the law to everyone, regardless of what they look like. When the Republican Party gets away from those principles, that is when we've lost Black America, and we need to bring Black America back. That means we need to bring back the principles of the Declaration of Independence, equally applied to everyone.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely right. And if you look back to the Great Depression, as I alluded to earlier, there was a 72-year reign for the Republican Party with minority and African-American support on their side, and they lost those principles. And one of the reasons that's pointed out to how we lost our way is we started to advocate more and more and more for less intervention inside of business practices, corporate. It sounds like what we're doing with the pilot program. You have the Dems here in the state of New Jersey wanting a pilot for the casinos, and Republicans like, Denny Levinson, commissioner board, Republican-run commissioner board in the county, who are fighting for the people. So those are the type of things there that you're talking about. The Republican Party has to get back to its ideals and not fighting for, the extreme wealthy and being the party known to only fight for the wealthy and to the rich, and to fight for these individual rights of people, and if we get back to, like you said, the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence and those things and the original principles of the Republican Party, then I think that would absolutely resonate, along with, of course, coming out of this economic downturn is a great opportunity, because it seems like this shift always happens during an economic downturn. So here we are coming out of an economic downturn. So it's a prime opportunity for the Republican Party to reestablish itself as that party of the people, by the people, for the people. I may have said that in the wrong order, but I wasn't planning on saying it at first.
You did good, Andrew. And what I found is in doing this study of the history of the Black American and the Republican Party, is that too often the Republican Party, for political expedience, has ostracized or ignored or marginalized Black America. This occurred in the 1877 compromise, where Rutherford B. Hayes was elected president, and then he agreed to pull all the Union troops out of the Deep South, allowing Jim Crow to become ensconced, which lasted for almost 100 years or 80 years until 1954 in the Civil Rights Act. And then also there were times when the Republicans, Richard Nixon gave up on trying to reach out to Black America, even Ronald Reagan in some regards, listening to the Southern strategy that started with Nixon and then went into the Reagan years. And it's because of political expedience was more important to the party than principle. And this is, we see now in our Republican Party today, Andrew, we see that the party is split majority as a personality, as a cult of personality, a party of personality rather than a party of principle. And the principle should transcend generation to generation, representative to representative. And when the Republican Party stops worrying about political expedience or putting political expedience at the top of the priority and the principles, it will once again bring our Black American brothers and sisters home to the party of emancipation.
You know, I don't disagree with you at all. And I think history shows us why we switched parties, why we chose the party to begin with, why we switched parties. So it gives us some data to be able to reflect back and say, well, if this is how we can bring them back into the fold. We have to actually, as you said, you know, stand on our principles and mean them. Don't just say it. It's not a, it's not a political speech. And I tell folks this all the time. We listen to these political speeches on the most popular, polished speaker. And listen, that's great. That's someone who worked on their craft, or someone who had enough money to hire a professional to make sure that they're good in front of a camera and they're very articulate. And that's important. I would never say that that's not important, but look at the substance of what they're getting done. Don't just, take into account what they're saying they're going to do, but look at what they're actually doing. Look at their record. Look what they're getting accomplished. Look at, do they answer first and foremost, do they answer the phone call when you call them? If you helped elect, I don't care if you're president of the United States or down to your local school board, if I voted for you and you won't pick up the phone when I have an issue or a question, if I can't get an answer from your office, then you will not get my vote again in that next election. And I don't care if that's Republican or Democrat. I don't care what that is. You're somebody that just ignored me as a constituent, and didn't take my concerns, didn't see that my concerns were important enough for you to at least send back some sort of generic message to say, we got your message, we heard what you have to say and we're looking into it. Say something, because we're all put in there to represent the people.
Yes.
We're not put in there to rule the people. Yeah. We're put there to represent the people. And so we're in the representation of the people. In essence, we're employees of the people. The people are hiring us to represent them in government.
Exactly. And Andrew, that's something that I believe that there are many representatives, they don't understand their role or the responsibility they have as a representative. We see this with the executive orders that are given at the gubernatorial level, and then the ignoring the state constitution during lockdowns and depriving the people of very, very essential constitutional rights, the freedom of assembly, the right to make a living, right, religious expression, all First Amendment rights. But it's so encouraging that you do truly understand the importance of what a representative is supposed to be. And that's what you're doing in Atlantic County. And that's why I think it's just, wonderful and that you're doing what you're doing. And you have a big fan with me. And as we close up, Andrew, I want to talk a little bit about incorporating these principles and what the principles of the Declaration provide us. The Constitution protects. And it's important that our representatives know what the Constitution says, because the Constitution is there to protect the natural rights that are identified in the Declaration of Independence. And we're going around at public schools here in South Jersey each Friday, and we've been teaching a presentation on the initial principles, or the principles rather, of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that protects them. And it's amazing that many of our representatives don't know a lot of what the education we're providing, and the people don't know. So it's very important that the people learn these principles that the Republican Party was founded on, which goes back really to the founding of the fathers, the founding fathers, and then the Constitution that protects them. So as we wind down, just talk about the importance, if you would, as what you could apply as a commissioner at the county level, the essential principles and the following the Constitution, our state Constitution, that protects them.
So if we look at what we've had a lot of issues come across our Atlantic County Commissioners Board over the last several months, and some of them have been asking us to send messages to our governor. Some of them have been asking us to formulate resolutions, sending messages to the president, with whether it be Roe v. Wade, or whether it be the Second Amendment, or whether it be, teaching sexual orientation curriculum. We've had a lot of folks that are coming to us saying we need you, or we're asking you guys as our local county elected legislators to send a message, higher up. We've been very particular, I would say, and to try to not to preside or make judgments or decisions on things based on how we feel as individuals, but to caucus and think about what oath we took, in our oath of office. In our oath of office that we take an oath to the Constitution of the United States, to the state Constitution. And so that is our charge. That is our charge, to be able to stay focused on not so much what Andrew Parker believes, because when I'm sitting up there in the dais, it's not about Andrew Parker. I can tell you all about how I feel and what I think and what I believe is right about the world and wrong about the world. And we can have that conversation in your backyard or over, a drink at our local eatery or winery or brewery or wherever we go, and have the conversation all about what That's right, Knife and Fork, great place.
With JR and
what Andrew thinks. But at the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves that it's not about Andrew when I'm sitting in the dais. It's about, following the oath that I made, and that oath is important because when we take oaths, we don't take them to the magistrate. We don't take them to the governor. We don't take that oath as loyalty to the president of the United States or to a political party. That oath that we take is to God. We raise our hand and we promise to God that we're gonna do certain things and that we're gonna uphold certain things, and that's our obligation to make sure that we do it. And so I think you're absolutely right that we need to get back to a representative government, because that's what our government is. And America only works if we're a representative government. If we allow ourselves to continue down that path where our congressmen and women or congress people or our president or people working in the White House or people working in the governor's office become kings and queens and monarchs and get to dictate to us, then we've lost the entire premise of the foundation of what this country was founded in. And so it's obvious why it's not going to work at that point. It's not going to work, but it's not going to work not because it's not built to work or designed to work. It's not going to work because we're not following the very foundational principles that establish what it means to be here. And there's civic responsibilities that go along with that. There's education that goes along with that. You have to be educated. You have to be engaged. You have to be willing to pick up the phone and call your commissioner up, Atlantic County Commissioner up, and say, listen, Commissioner, I voted for you, or I didn't vote for you, but still I live in your town, or I live in your area, I live in your county, and I'm having an issue, or I have an idea, or I have a thought, or I have a program or a project, or I need some help. And then see what kind of relationship or what kind of answers you get from that representative. If I'm non-responsive, then you know what? Don't vote for me in the next election. I haven't earned your vote, But if I respond to you, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent or whatever party, Green Party, Tea Party, if you call my office and I respond in a favorable way, and I can help you from move whatever your interest is, and support that person, because on your local government level, we have to remember there's not a lot of money we're not making great money representing you, not on a local level.
Mhm.
You know, and I know we think that all politicians are corrupt and we're all making money, and I get that idea because that's what we're marketed a lot. But if
Right.
you look at what your local representatives are making, it's a really low stipend for the most part, and the majority of us are part-time. We're working doing that so-called part-time. I call it a part-time job that ends up being overtime because the phone never ends and the emails never end, the meetings never end, the functions never end, the interviews never end. But somehow it's considered a part-time stipend job, and I still have to go in and teach for a
Yeah,
living. I have
your
to go earn
job.
my living
Yeah,
doing my usual vocation. This isn't
right.
what I do for a living. So when you have those folks, and I don't care if they're volunteer coaches for your little league softball teams or baseball teams, or when you have folks that are volunteering or getting engaged to do extra instead of sitting at home, where we could be sitting at home around the pool, doing anything that we want to do in our homes, and we're choosing to take the time out to get engaged into this process to make for a better society, to make for a better future for ourselves and for our kids and for our grandkids. We need to really support those folks on a local level. Stay engaged, hold them accountable, because we're not all created equal. There's some good people and some bad people that are out there, but stay engaged enough to find out who we are, in the dark as well as in the light, and hold us accountable for the job that you elected us to do.
Outstanding, Andrew. And you provided the perfect coda to this conversation, talking about it's not based upon your opinion or your plan or your idea. Your responsibility is to defend the Constitution, because the Constitution is the protector of our natural rights. And reminded me what George Washington said towards the end of his second administration, when he was sent a letter by a group in Boston that was concerned about some foreign policy issues, and they were inquisitive of George Washington on what he would do. And Washington said that, not based upon my predilection, which is his bias or his prejudice or his ideas, not based on my predilection, but the Constitution is the guide I must always follow and will never abandon. And that's exactly,
Absolutely.
and that is the example. And he provides the example in so many ways of all the things that he did. But he provides the example for every single elected representative, whether they're serving at the commissioner level, or whether they're serving in the state legislature, or whether they're a governor or an executive serving at the federal level as a legislator, or the president of the United States, or a judge in the judiciary system. He sets the example by saying the Constitution is the guide I will never abandon. And that's exactly what you said tonight. And it brought great joy to my heart when I heard that. Andrew, would you like to make one closing statement before we say goodbye?
I would like to just say thank you for having me come on. I appreciate the conversations and the education that we get from one another, because after every conversation, I think you can see I take notes during all our interviews and our conversations that we have. And a lot of that is so that I can go back and do some historical referencing and research of my own, to make sure that the next time that we speak, I'm knowledgeable of whatever it is that, we spoke about. And that's just, I think that right there is an example of what America is, what America should be.
Yes.
And we have two people that are engaged in the conversation, that are willing to do the work. And we realize that we share a common interest, and that common interest is written down inside that Constitution. And so to those, I'll challenge my Democrat friends or some of my minority friends to say, well, that Constitution was never any good. No, I challenge them and say, it's not the Constitution that was flawed. It was man that was flawed.
That's right.
It was men and how they took and tried to use the Constitution for their own, at a time when they said, well, all men are created equal. Well, Black men are not men. They're 3/5 of a man. And those are the kind of games that were played throughout history. And we can't get caught up in those type of games. We can't get caught up in that kind of petty behavior. We're adults, and we can read. you know, and have conversations amongst each other to decide what we think is in the best interest of moving our society and humanity forward in a more positive, perfect direction, as opposed to constructing it into a lesser negative direction. And at the end of the day, that's all we're doing.
Andrew,
that's all we're doing. So anyone who's interested in that kind of building, I'm a member of their team. And anyone who's not interested in that type of building, then you're not going to find Andrew Parker as a member of your team. I won't be there.
Well, Andrew, we will certainly have another conversation, and I would like to conclude our conversation with some remarks quickly that Abraham Lincoln said on June the 26th of 1857. He said, quote, "They," that means our founders, "meant to set up a standard maxim," which was indeed the Declaration of Independence. A standard maxim they meant to set up for a free society, which should be familiar to everyone and revered by everyone, constantly looked to, constantly labored for, and even though never perfectly attained, constantly approximated, and thereby constantly spreading and deepening its influence and augmenting the happiness and value of life to all people of all colors everywhere, unquote.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And that
great place to end.
And Andrew, that is the message that we can reinvigorate and restore the initial principles of the Republican Party with that message right there, and implement that in our governance and in our platform and in our policy as Republicans. Andrew, I can't thank you enough. We will definitely talk again. And I learned more from you than you probably from me. And I really greatly appreciate your dear friendship. You're a true brother. And I thank you.
I appreciate you too, John.